Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
We have some business to discuss.
We do. We have business.
Some shoe business.
Can I say something? Have you ever downloaded? So you know, how do you listen to this podcast? I know you listen to our own podcast, right? You do a QC, the old quality check.
Yes.
Yeah.
I listen to it on Downcast.
You know what? I used to listen to it on Downcast. I've switched to Overcast. And you know what I'm going to say? I think we sound better in Overcast.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yes.
That's funny.
Marco Arment is the developer of Overcast, and he actually put a lot of work trying to re-engineer an audio engine from scratch for this app, for this podcast app, and it works really, really well. And you know what I like the most about it? And this is fascinating. There is a feature in it that you can turn on where it's called Smart Speed. And essentially what it does is it goes through and it gets rid of all of the gaps when you're not talking. And it just squishes them all together. But it doesn't increase the overall speed of the rest of the show. So you don't end up sounding like chipmunks when you're... Right?
Right.
You sound at normal speed, but there are no gaps. So it just sounds like we are incredibly smart and never have to take a minute to think.
We are incredibly smart. We never take a minute to think. What are you talking about?
Well, I cut most of those out, but it does it automatically, and so I have switched over. But anyway, the whole reason I'm saying this, you know how sometimes we say, please give us a review on iTunes. That's really nice.
Yes.
People do that. It's really nice to do that. In Overcast, if you can recommend episodes by just pressing a button. You just go to the button and it says recommend. You want to recommend this episode? Yes. And then in his catalog, when you go to search for other shows, your recommended shows will show up. Isn't that smart?
That's nice.
So if you're an Overcast listener, and 7% of our listeners are Overcast listeners,
hey,
please recommend the show in Overcast, because it's great if you do that.
Yeah, I can't do that in Downcast.
No, there is no such thing. So thank you, Andy, for nothing.
Nothing.
That's all I had in terms of my business. We had a death.
We have 2 deaths.
2? I'm only caught up on 1, and it was so sad. I don't need another one.
Happy Days actor Al Molinaro died.
Oh, it was 2. Oh, Big Al. That one is sad.
He was the owner, Big Al Del Vecchio.
Yeah. Wasn't it Del Vecchio?
Was it Del Vecchio?
This, I'm gonna go to the mat on this one. I think this may be the only name I can ever pronounce correctly on this show besides my own.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Now I feel like a not fan.
Del Vecchio.
And I loved you, Al.
Oh, yes, that was a sad one. And the other?
The other was Melissa Matheson.
Young. Too young. Wasn't she like 65?
Yeah, 65 years old. She wrote The Black Stallion, The Indian in the Cupboard, Kundun, part of Twilight Zone the movie, and of course the one that everybody remembers her for is E.T.
And she used to be, wasn't she married to Harrison Ford for a while?
Yeah, all the way until 2004.
Yeah. That is a sad loss. Our thoughts are with the families of the Molinaros and the Mathesons. Sad.
Indeed.
We do have some follow-up from... You know what we got? We got 2 follow-ups. We got the Blot Spot.
Yes, he said, glad you guys saw the awful in this film. Talking about Children of the Corn last week. Wow, every aspect was hard to watch. This is a movie that terrified my wife when she was young, and she's much tougher than me about horror, so I dreaded watching it. Now I have to wonder, am I desensitized that much, or is this movie just aged terribly? Because I wasn't even slightly afraid or even disturbed. I actually chuckled at the terrible script, acting, and effects, and don't even get me started on that ridiculous voiceover and the inclusion of the good kids. Children of the Corn is a straight-up bad movie, and I'm so glad this series is over. Wink. Your rank after all the re-ranking, 205 out of 208. My rank, 204 out of 208. We can't believe that you actually liked it more than we did, Ben.
This is on you, Ben. Oh, that's a riot.
I think so, too.
We got some follow-up from a friend of the show, Joel Micah Harris. We haven't heard from him for a while.
He said, man, this movie scared the crap out of me as a kid. I rewatched it as an adult a few years ago, and it was horrible. Having said that, I could totally see this being good fodder for a remake. Try the 2009 version. It's not true, Joel. Give it to Frank Darabont, and we might have a great movie. Maybe if Frank Darabont took it on. Oh, and I love the re-rank, guys. Sad but true fact, I could listen to an entire podcast of you ranking movies on Flickchart and discussing why each movie is more or least deserving. Good stuff, Pete and Andy.
Oh, thanks,
Pretty
Joel. We miss you, man. Thank you so much for saying that, for writing in. And a note of follow-up to Philip Hurd, friend of the show on Facebook. Philip commented on my woes about our podcast archives. Podcast archives are fixed. And so thank you, Philip, for saying that we spoil you by that deep archive. We sure appreciate you appreciating that. And it's all fixed. It took the better part of the long weekend, but I got it done. So every episode should play both on the website and you should be able to download it in various podcast directories. If you have any problems, please let me know.
And then a new listener, Mindy Laugh, commented over on Twitter. She said she finally is figuring out how to fix her flick chart to match ours, which is fantastic. She's not quite at the 208 yet, but she's working on it. It's good to have goals, which is fantastic to hear, Mindy, and glad you are tuning into the show.
Absolutely. Welcome, Mindy. And we've had some great discussion with our Listener's Choice winner, Diego Luis Contreras. And we're coming to terms with what his Listener's Choice film will be, which we should be able to announce shortly.
Definitely.
I think that's it. Should we tell the people where we're from?
Where are we from?
This is The Next Reel, everybody, on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, the first in our brief series of the films of Hayao Miyazaki, with his directorial debut film, 1979's The Castle of Cagliostro. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in iTunes or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you've ever secretly thought about starting an underground counterfeiting operation calling your bills goat bucks, you should head over to Instagram.com/TheNextReel and play The Next Reel's Instagram, #PonyPrize, #GuessTheMovieChallenge.
And since our dear impresario of Instagram, Stephen Smart, went off looking for the Castle of Cagliostro, but ended up in Barcelona, I am here to report. This week, I was doing Moulin Rouge, the fantastic Baz Luhrmann film from 2001, and it only took 2 images for N. Bergloff to be able to figure out that it was in fact Moulin Rouge. The first image really threw everybody. Nobody could quite figure out exactly what that was. It's a very close shot of the blank piece of paper in the typewriter. But after that...
That's just mean.
It was great. It was super obscure, which, in that movie, it's very visually designed, so it was a little tricky finding some tricky images. And the second image I thought would, trick people still, but not N. Bergloff, who was able to figure it out. So congratulations, you're entered to win the 2015 Pony Prize.
Outstanding, Andy. It's time. Let's do trailers. I think you should go first because I actually have been looking forward to your movie for a really long time, and I just want to get it out there.
Oh, have you?
You'll never guess. Go ahead and guess. Where did I hear about this movie?
Where did you hear about this movie? I have no idea. Because I feel like I'd heard of this, but I don't know. I think I knew that it was coming out, but it really surprised me. Where did you hear about it?
Well, the fabulous podcast Doug Loves Movies. He actually was doing a show. I think it was Telluride. When this film was being premiered, or not premiered, it was at least being exhibited at the Telluride Film Festival, and he had seen it.
It did premiere. It did premiere just this past September. Yeah,
that's right. And so he and the entire cast and all of these people, if you know Doug Benson, all of the people on the show were completely stoned, and they're all ribald comedians, and they all had incredibly wonderful things to say about this film you are about to talk about. Wonderful things.
That is so nice to hear.
Yes.
I am, of course, talking about Charlie Kaufman's new movie, Anomalisa, which is a great little title. And it looks really interesting, mostly because it's actually stop-motion animation, which is very exciting. It seems almost really fitting with Charlie Kaufman and kind of the way that he has been going in his career. Synecdoche, New York, I really did not like that film. I had a really hard time getting into the characters, but I did find it really fascinating, and I enjoyed the way that he was moving as far as telling a story that was so in your head. At least that's how I found it. And this looks like it's taking it even more, the next step into this kind of analysis of kind of what it's like to be just a person in this kind of normal world done with stop motion animation, which seems like a really interesting way to kind of explore humanity. And I got really excited watching this trailer, and I don't know if this is going to be another Synecdoche, New York for me or not, but I still really want to see it, and that excites me. It's actually co-directed by Charlie Kaufman and Duke Johnson, and I don't know if that's just because Duke Johnson maybe somebody who's more in the stop motion animation world, I'm assuming, because that does seem to kind of be his forte. But this looks really exciting. It's got David Thewlis in it, who's not in enough stuff. Tom Noonan, who is one of the more, I don't know, there's something about him that I always am creeped out by. I don't know why. And Jennifer Jason Leigh. So, and that's it. Tom Noonan is credited as everyone else in the film. We got David Thewlis as Michael Stone, Jennifer Jason Leigh as Lisa, and Tom Noonan as everyone else.
I think it's fantastic. I think the conceit is really clever. I think it's one of those where probably if they didn't do it stop motion, there wouldn't be quite enough of it that's unique and beautiful. But I think that animation is going to lend that next dimension that will really take the story to someplace special. That's my bet. I think it's going to be a fantastic one, and I think it will be underappreciated.
I think so too. I definitely think so. And like I said, it could be another Synecdoche, New York. But that's okay, because even though I don't like that one, I had a hard time with it, I still find it to be an incredibly artful film.
Yes, absolutely.
So maybe this will be too.
Yeah.
This opens a very limited release at the end of the year, December 30th, and then it's going to be opening wider. Don't know how wide, but wider in January.
My film is Christmas Eve from writer-director Mitch Davis. I don't know anything of Mitch Davis. He has done some other things that I have not seen. Co-written with Tyler McKellar. Also, I know nothing of Tyler McKellar. Looks like a new voice on the scene. It is a film that it looks a little bit like a New York Stories. It's a vignette kind of a film, I think, where 6 different groups of New Yorkers get trapped inside elevators on Christmas Eve. I always have my radar up for a Patrick Stewart film, and he is in this one, along with John Hader, James Roday, who I like very much. I think he's a charming person. I've watched him for years on Psych. And Cheryl Hines, Gary Cole, very funny. Max Casella. I mean, it's got a fantastic cast. A lot of people I haven't heard of, but those that I have, I'm very fond of. I think it's a little bit of pre-holiday cheer. It's funny to me that it's opening December 4th. It almost feels like it should be opening a little bit closer to Christmas, but what are you going to do with schedules? I don't know. What do you think? Am I misguided?
I had a hard time figuring out the tone of the film based on the trailer. It started feeling like a much more of a comedy, and then it kind of, and it's billed as a comedy, but then it kind of started feeling like almost it was going to be like the anti-Love Actually, which kind of got me a little excited. I'm like, oh, this will be great. And then it started feeling really sappy and sweet. And I'm like, wow, what is it? And I felt like there were some weird tone shifts just throughout this trailer, so I couldn't really pinpoint what the film was going for. I think it could work. I just really couldn't quite figure it out. And I really couldn't figure out what the whole point of the van crashing into the lake was. It seemed like somehow that sets off this thing. Is that the Angel of Christmas who crashes?
Right, with the funky, like incredibly hyper accentuated lightning bolt across the axle.
Right, exactly. Definitely something we both noticed. So. Yeah, so I don't know what to make of the film. I think it could be interesting. I think it could be another example of the film I talked about last week. I want it to be good, but it may not be. But
it may not be. Yeah, so I'm with you. I think, every year, every holiday season, we break out the audio version of Patrick Stewart's Christmas Story, right? The Christmas Carol he does, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Which is just fantastic. And so, that guy has come to mean Christmas more to us around here than Jean-Luc Picard, which is a funny transformation because very few Star Trek canon actors have managed to transcend that for me. And yet he certainly has. And so I get excited when I see him in other stories, particularly a Christmas story. I'm going to give this a shot. Comes out December 4th, 2015.
Excellent.
Andy, don't you dare die before I get to arrest you.
Clarice, Lupin という男を知っているのか?
あらららら、すっかりあげちまってな。
おい、こんなちっぽけな国に一体何があるんだ?
あるさ、あの城にね。
The Castle of Cagliostro. Lupin Sensei. Cagliostro no Shiro. What do you think about that?
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
1979. This is Hayao Miyazaki's directorial debut. And this was
theatrical film directorial.
As a film, right. That's a good catch. This was before Studio Ghibli.
Correct.
Right. And so that's an important thing because this film, it's not a Studio Ghibli film. I say that in every possible meaning of the phrase. Intention.
This is Toei Animation and TMS Entertainment who teamed up to make this.
Yes, it is based on a manga comic.
Correct. By Monkey Punch.
Monkey Punch.
I just had to say that because that's one of the best names ever.
I know. I can't wait to talk more about Monkey Punch, who had some interesting things to say about this adaptation of the comic. It's a fun action film, and it's a fun action film that has very, very long arms. It has been said to inspire Steven Spielberg, and with the main character of Indiana Jones, it's been said to inspire a lot of John Lasseter. He's a big fan of this particular film. This film has tentacles in a lot of films and filmmakers that we watch today. How did it hit you?
I've seen this film 3 times now, and it was an interesting one because I think I like it less than most of Miyazaki's other films, but I do find that it's actually growing on me. The more that I've watched it, the more I find myself enjoying it. There's something about the just kind of the simplicity of the story and everything, and just kind of these characters. I think there's such interesting characters that they have. I have kind of grown a little attached to them now, and I actually find myself curious about looking at some of the other Lupin the Third films. Although based on what I've read about kind of the character Lupin the Third by Monkey Punch in the manga comics, it sounds like a vastly different character, and I don't know if I'd actually like that Lupin. There's the one scene in this film where Miyazaki had there's the princess Clarice, and he has Lupin the Third go to rescue her and to get her out of there. And Monkey Punch said, "Oh well, I never would have had him rescue her. I probably would have had him rape her."
That's not what I would have anticipated, but it really sets the tone for what you can expect from this adaptation.
Yeah, and I guess if you're interested in looking at the manga comics, what you can expect in those.
Yes, right. Very, very different. But it also, I think, really gives us a good place to start talking about the Miyazaki, the Miyazaki voice. The visual voice, I mean, I think his choices in his work co-writing this thing and directing it really sets a tone for some of the much, much more flamboyant pieces yet to come, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I do feel there are elements that you can see throughout the film that just kind of do hint at some of those Miyazaki elements that he does continue throughout his career. And it's nice to see even something that is in a different world. I mean, he had familiarity with Lupin already. He had directed a couple of the TV episodes and everything. But this, while it probably still feels more in the Lupin the Third world of storytelling, it still does have some of those Miyazaki elements.
It does. I was thinking about that in terms of the, just the overall design. And one of the things that I think is so interesting about the visual design of this thing, and I want to separate the things that are wildly Miyazaki, that we'll talk about in coming weeks. In this case, there's such a rich European influence in the landscape and the architecture and the cars. This is so European, right? I mean, it just screams European, except for we have a samurai character who is obviously Japanese, and we have a Japanese politician that, in contrast to the rest of the characters in the film, comes off as insensitively racist. Right? It is the stereotypical Japanese persona that you would see, in something that was lampooning Japanese animation, and I found that fascinating.
You mean the lieutenant?
No, when they're in the it's not a consulate, but there's like the
it's like the Interpol.
The Interpol thing. Yeah. All the different
meeting.
countries
Right.
are meeting. And it cuts to a Japanese one for the first time. And a part of this is the danger of dubbing, right? Because, in this case, I watched the dub version. Did you find a subtitle?
Yeah, I mean, typically I will always watch subtitled versions. But as we had decided we were going to be watching these with our kids, and that just doesn't fly with a 5 and a 9-year-old.
Yeah, they just don't read fast enough.
Exactly. So we watched the 2000 dubbed version.
Yes, I got mine on Hulu Plus, and it was fine. I think the challenge with dubbing is that I just. Usually they add stuff, right? They add stuff that's that context stuff that you don't normally get in the script because you don't need it. If you're a Japanese person watching in Japanese, you know the cultural cues, and they don't need to add any sort of exposition and sneak things into the dubbing and the dubbed script. And so in this case, I felt like I was being played a little bit. But in particular, when they cut to characters that were obviously Japanese and they needed to make they made a strange tonal shift and actually had them speaking English in a Japanese accent that seemed like they were lampooning the Japanese translation, and I thought that was really bizarre. Maybe it was a bizarre, late '90s choice, but I didn't truck with that all that well.
Yeah.
Anyway, the overall sort of hints that you get are that this is a Miyazaki film. And I should preface this by saying I'm not crazy about this film. This is not one of my favorite films. I find it fun, but I don't find it any more fun than if I were to turn on one of the modern sort of like Batman retellings, animated Batman series. I find them, it was fine. It didn't have a particularly great script. It didn't have the story was, I think, pretty predictable. I didn't really, jive with the movie all that well. And I'm like you, you've seen it. I felt like I've seen it. But what I think you do see, and we talk about a little bit about the European influences, not just in the design of the people, but in the landscape and the architecture. You see the castle itself. It takes on such character of like this beautiful worn down kind of antique or sort of facade of a historical site. I think it ends up being really beautiful. The architecture is fantastical, but only slightly so, to the point where you're introduced to the physical structure of places in a way that feels very firm and grounded until you start seeing things that are just not, and little hints of dreamlike structures that kind of sprout out of the main facilities. I think that's really interesting. You have a car that you normally would just see driving around the European countryside until it drives up on the side of a cliff, like the straight vertical side of a cliff. I think these things are really fun, flamboyant little Miyazaki touches that give you a hint of the kinds of craziness that you're going to see in coming films.
Yeah, and they balance what they can get away with in animation with kind of reality very nicely, I think. Those moments where the car drives up on the side of the cliff, you can almost buy it because of the way that it's animated, or the fact that Lupin has this tiny wire thing attached to his belt that he can raise himself and lower himself with.
The infinite grappling hook,
Right. Or my favorite is the moment when he leaps off the roof as he starts falling. He just basically runs as fast as he can and leaps from that roof to another roof to the side of the tower and then scales it. And it's just, it's animation. It's kind of defying the laws of gravity a little bit, but there's enough reality there that they get away with it. And I think that Miyazaki was great at that in this film.
Especially I think the sort of interpretation of ballet, and in that example of him running off the roof is a great one, as he runs, and the way his legs move and the way they stretch as he's in midair, and the way he sort of pivots off of the structures that are between the one roof and the actual tower, the impossible tower that he's trying to get to.
The hang time is just so it's such a balletic, beautiful hang time up there.
Who would you say is the target audience for this thing?
Oh, I think it's families. I think it's definitely kind of a fun family film. My kids love it. I mean, they really do enjoy watching this film. It's a very kind of an easy film for them. And the nice thing about the Blu-ray is, aside from having like every version of the film that there is as far as the different languages and dubs, is there's also a kind of a clean family dub that tones down some of it, because it's a little there's a lot more swearing in this one than I think there's actually swearing in this one as opposed to any of his other films.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I think that it seems funny that the intention, and not speaking Japanese, I don't really know, but it seems like the intention may have changed in the dub that we watched from the original film. I mean, there was nothing that necessarily required swearing to get the point,
And that's I was listening to the commentary, and the guy was saying that for the most recent dub, they, for some reason, decided that they needed to put in more swear words than had been there, and he thought it was strange because it was not something that Miyazaki ever really felt should have been in the film, because it was supposed to be a family-friendly sort of film, just very much a fun caper film.
Yeah,
a gentleman thief film.
Yeah, and you definitely can feel that just through the visual sort of language of the film, that it doesn't necessarily need to be. Even the most sort of gruesome characters are not all that gruesome. The henchman characters, and this was something I'd asked my kids about. After we watched it, was there anything that felt naturally threatening to you? And my kids are a little bit older than yours, 9 and 13, and there was nothing necessarily threatening. But my daughter had said, I thought that the film was so weird visually anyway that I actually thought these weird kind of masked, pointy-fingered characters were real, not actually in masks, that they were somehow kind of fantastical blobs that were supposed to be believable as such, until the end, when you see the samurai actually cut their masks off, and you see here's a guy with a mustache, and there's a guy with a beard, and there's a guy wearing glasses, right. which was pretty funny, but nothing particularly threatening.
No, and that actually is an interesting point that you bring up, though, just kind of going back to the earlier conversation, is that did feel like something that was very Miyazaki, is having these kind of really quirky takes on those sorts of characters. They did feel like otherworld beings, when like those ninja people, they the way that they would kind of creep in, and they had those really long pointy fingers, and just everything about them just seemed so non-human. It really was a little more creepy, and I know is something that my kids definitely latched onto, was just kind of the creepiness of those guys, and it was a lot of fun, and it was surprising to actually see them revealed as just kind of basic ninjas. I mean, I guess you get that earlier when you see Jodo, when he's talking to the Count about having failed him of killing those two guys. You see him in one of the outfits, so you know that he was out there with them, but. It is an interesting little Miyazaki thing that does kind of seem to kind of grow as he latches onto those sorts of quirks as he continues in his career.
One of the things that I sort of latch onto, and I have not seen all of Miyazaki's films, and so I feel like I'm missing some in the collection. But one of the things I thought was interesting in this one is that it almost feels like he's fighting to create more balanced gender roles in this film. And I say that because many of his other films, those that I have seen, have even more of these strong women characters that don't play this role that they need to be rescued, but they just play a dramatic narrative role in the film, and they are the rescuers, or they are the sufferers, or they are the protagonists, and we get to see them coming of age. We get to see that. I mean, I'm talking more about like Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service and Nausicaa and Spirited Away, and I mean these are films that do much more to celebrate. I think that balanced gender roles, or even a more feminist, heroic position in these films. And this one was interesting because you do have a more traditional kind of Disney-esque, we must rescue the princess, but we also have the kind of the Rambo like freelance soldier, right, the mercenary. Fujiko is the mercenary, and I think she is a fantastic contrast to to the princess needing rescue.
I don't know how much of that's in this particular film, at least, we can attribute to Miyazaki, because I mean, the 5 principal characters, my understanding, I haven't seen anything else that is Lupin the Third, but the 5 principal characters are Lupin the Third, Daisuke, Jigen, Zenigata, the inspector, Fujiko, and Goemon. Those 5 are kind of the core of all the Lupin stories. So
Yes.
Fujiko is always there.
Yes.
And she often helps Lupin the Third with his capers, and then sometimes she's kind of trying to help herself as a part of those capers.
I think his instinct is interesting to me. That's the thing that I'm most interested in about this, this interpretation is just seeing how we capture both of these kind of these sides of that feminist or feminine hero.
Yeah.
It's sort of why I like Miyazaki films for the kids, because they're kind of anti Disney in a little bit in that regard.
The other thing that I think Miyazaki brings to the table that does kind of, I think, tie into what you're saying is just the transition from the monkey punch style of Lupin the Third to one that is a little more family friendly. And I don't know enough about the TV series. I mean, there was, I think, 4 different Lupin series. There's 5 other movies. There's so much Lupin out there. It's crazy how popular this character is. And but he wrote the script, and he went back. The whole character of Lupin the Third is supposed to be the grandson of Arsène Lupin, a famous French thief, written by Maurice Leblanc back in the I think it was in the early. When was he writing Arsène Lupin? In the early 1900s, I think he started writing the Arsène Lupin stories, and Miyazaki went back to one of the original Lupin stories that dealt with Princess Clarice. It was called the Countess of Cagliostro, and from 1924. And so he went back to that story to try finding some elements to build this script, and then he pulled some other elements from some of the other Arsène Lupin stories to kind of help create this one. But I think that says a lot that he was taking some of the Lupin the Third elements from Monkey Punch, but I think the fact that he went back to this kind of gentleman burglar that Maurice Leblanc had created says what Miyazaki was really trying to do with this story. He didn't want that kind of crass type of story. He did want to make something that was friendlier for the family and that had a character we could identify with more, and wasn't as aggressive toward women. I think there's a lot there just in how he approached finding his story that says a lot about him and where he would go from here.
I think that's. I'm glad you brought that up. That the Arsène Lupin connection, I think, is really good. And when you look at the comparison of the characters, you can really see some of the. And of course, we don't have the Arsène Lupin sort of moving pictures, but what we do have are these. The art of Arsène Lupin was the monocle wearing, top hat doffed, real like gentleman of thievery. And I think it was really interesting. It makes me want to go back. Did you pick up the Sherlock Holmes introduction to Lupin's story?
No, I didn't.
It was in 1906. Maurice introduced Sherlock Holmes to the story, but Conan Doyle said, no, we're not going to be doing that. And so he introduced a new character called Arsène Lupin versus Sherlock Sholmes in 1906, and this is in Volume 2, and so it's a French release, but it looks like one of those. It's one of those that allowed. He wrote Lupin's story such that he manages to solve riddles that Sherlock Sholmes is unable to solve himself, and so it's a little game of one-upsmanship that I think is really interesting to kind of play with, especially going on that far back. In the early 1900s.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Who knew?
Back to Miyazaki, I do think another element that we do see in this film that did feel a little Miyazaki-ish is the elements of nature and some of the ways that he would compose some of the shots within the film. I think that it does just say, hey, this is Miyazaki at work here. The way that he just kind of sets things up really feels very very cinematic. And that's something I've always really enjoyed about his films is while they're animated, and I've just always enjoyed watching them, this style of animation, but they still feel very cinematic. And it's simple. This is a very simplistic animation done for this film. I mean, this film was a whirlwind of production. They actually, for whatever reason, I think it got greenlit like in March or something, and then it premiered in December, which is kind of an insane turnaround for an animated film. I mean, if anyone is familiar with like how long Disney takes getting any of their films ready, I mean, it's like 4 years. It's just so much time going into the story and reworking the story constantly as they really kind of begin fleshing everything out and drawing everything. It takes a really long time. This was done in less than a year. It's super crazy. And I don't think that Miyazaki ended up being completely happy with the result. I think that there was a different ending he originally had planned that he had to change in order to meet the deadline. And I don't think he liked this new ending as much. I actually like the ending. I think it works really nicely. I love seeing everything up on the clock tower and through the kind of inner workings of the clock. Speaking of nods in other films,
yes.
It's definitely a big nod pulled from this in the 1986 Great Mouse Detective, which I thought was a great little thing to see when you see that in this film. I was like, that's where they got it. And but I still like the ending. I think it's a lot of fun, and it was really funny how kids react to things. And watching something like this with my kids, when Cagliostro ends up getting caught between the two hands of the clock as they are coming closer and closer, and he's trying to hold them off, and then you just get that nice wide shot as they just kind of squish together. My daughter couldn't even look at the screen. It was very funny.
I think that's a great point, and I'm with you on the end. I enjoyed the end. I thought the end was a fun reveal after the destruction of the clock tower and the way the water sort of releases the underground kind of ruins of the old city. I thought that was a great little puzzle to have been solved. And so I was really very satisfied with that. I think it was earned. It was finally earned.
Yeah, right. It was it's the sort of ending where the treasure of Cagliostro ends up being something that's so much more than treasure, right? It's this ancient city under the lake, and that
is Miyazaki. Now, if it had been an ancient city named Hope. Or Confusion, then it would have been it was actually a phantom city named Hope. You had to think real hard about it to win. That was, but I thought it was, I think you're right. I think that's a particularly Miyazaki thing. Did you happen to note who the Count, did he look like anybody to you? He resemble anybody to you? I was thinking you in particular might share this.
Like me?
No. Might share my sense that he looked like somebody familiar.
Gosh, I don't know. Who are you thinking?
Robert Wagner.
Oh, that's actually kind of true.
Right?
That really is.
You need to go back and watch a little of it too and see. One of the interesting things my daughter said, she picked up on this with, particularly with in respect to the Count, that there is a thing about trust in this movie. The characters that are trustworthy are the characters that speak out of their whole mouths. And interestingly, none of the characters speak out of their whole mouths except the princess.
Really?
Yeah. Even Lupin. I think actually maybe the samurai does. I didn't look that closely at that one. I need to go back and look at that one. But many characters spend a lot of their time in dialogue speaking out of half their mouths.
That's kind of interesting.
It is very interesting, right? And the way she put it, they're not trustworthy because you never know what they're saying out of the other side of their mouth.
Oh.
I thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating.
I didn't notice that at first.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you think about that and Robert Wagner.
Exactly.
I swear this movie is an homage to Robert Wagner.
That's very funny. You know, it's interesting, just the style of anime compared to what we're so used to over here in this country, the Disney style. I guess that's what we can call it, but Walt Disney, I think, really set the standard for animation in the U.S. that we're all used to because he pretty much started the art form. I grew up on a lot of anime TV shows. Belle and Sebastian was one of my favorites. I really enjoyed some of the early anime movies that I would just see, like adaptations of stories, like things like Anne of Green Gables and things like that I didn't even know what it was at the time that I was watching. I would just watch it because it was a cartoon, and I really enjoyed just kind of all of those. Oliver Twist. There was a great Oliver Twist one that I would watch, and just these things that I would watch that were anime that I really enjoyed, and I just had no sense as to what that was. But I've always really kind of been drawn to the style. I think it's really interesting. I think there are limits. I do think there are points where the eyes are just a little too big, and I'm not quite as drawn into them. But I love what they're doing with the stories. I love that it's kind of, there's a little more to them. They don't feel like they have to be just kind of the princess fairy tale sorts of stories. And Disney has certainly gotten away from that, and I certainly appreciate that. And, I'm a huge Disney fan. I really enjoy the Disney films. But I do think it's very interesting, this different take on animation and what animators were doing at the time, and in particular what Miyazaki ends up doing and how he kind of continues with his style, especially, and we'll probably talk about this more when we get to The Wind Rises, his last film, because that film came out at a particular time after really the point when hand-drawn animated films have stopped largely here in the U.S. And I think there's something about this hand-drawn style that he really connects with and finds a way to just get a lot of detail in there that just makes them feel like real worlds.
Yeah, it's so interesting because even in this film, as much as it feels like you can almost get there. You almost get there. I'm with you, though. It seems like the technique, right, the style of animation is more effective when it is less, when it attempts to be less of our real world.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like
so.
It's so much more immersive when I feel like I'm in his dream. Right? When I'm like parading through some world that he's created for me. That's why in this film it feels less ambitious because I feel less because there's too much of it that I feel like is a part of my world, right? It's like too little metaphor, too much kind of practicality and gadgetry and too little sort of painterly approach to the scape. And I think, even you look at the more violent sort of anime, the anime that I feel like I grew up on was like Akira, I mean, it was like just much, much more violent but it really represents kind of the kinds of things that I was watching and interested in. And it was so fantastical that I would dream in this style because I felt like I was in it, so I would get so excited. One of my very favorite, sort of modern takes on some of this stuff was remember when The Matrix came out and they did the Beyond the Matrix stuff? It was all...
Oh, the Animatrix.
The Animatrix, right. I think there was some... the Final Flight of the Osiris was great. Beyond was great. I mean, these are all sort of variations on a very similar kind of Miyazaki-defined style that I think really are really define what I was interested in as a kid. And so this one it's a bridge to what I'm familiar with, and the films we're talking about in coming weeks are my destination.
Well, I agree. I mean, all of those films,
Ghost in a Shell. Oh.
Lensman. I mean, there was a lot of great anime films that did come out as we kind of got older, and those styles. I mean, the sci-fi elements that they had in them. I think what was so different about them is they felt like they tackled different genres. And I think at the time, so much of the Disney animation felt so grounded in kind of historical or past things, you know. I mean, I don't think they ever did anything futuristic until Treasure Planet, maybe. Was that their first film where they actually did something that was more of a sci-fi?
Wow.
I think it was, which was that 2001 or 2, something like that?
Jeez. That's sad.
Well, I don't know if it's sad. It's just they had a very different take on the direction they were going, and they didn't branch out. And they really still haven't, largely. I mean, they've never done any big sci-fi, really kind of interesting things using the art form in an Akira sort of style where it really takes it in a different direction. They've never done that.
No, that is true. I don't know. Maybe that's something that they're counting on Pixar to come up with. Well, maybe that's part of it. Maybe. I mean, Pixar has certainly gone a little more of that route. WALL-E, I mean, was all that was exactly my thought. Yeah.
But they've never gone adult. They've never really made an animated film that is more of a film for an adult. And that's, I think, where a lot of these other anime films have gone. I mean, Ghost in the Shell, Akira, these are not films I would sit down and show with my kids.
No.
They're just not quite... They're not quite that. And, you know, it's certainly not something like Grave of the Fireflies. I mean, there's a line that the Japanese crossed in their anime films that we've never crossed in any of the kind of the Disney sorts of films. Disney, it's always been family friendly, geared for the children, and that's what it is. I don't think there's a problem with that. I just don't think that they've expanded into other genres like so many of these different anime styles have. And I think that's maybe why you and I are drawn to a lot of these anime films, because they tackle bigger issues. They look at Blade Runner-esque sci-fi elements that are really fun to think about and just talk about and dwell on and watch. And while Lupin the Third is not that sort of film, it still is a very fun film. I mean, I guess Tangled, you have kind of a bank robber of sorts who is kind of one of your main characters. But, you know, a Lupin the Third robber, a gentleman thief, is not somebody that you're probably going to have in a Disney film, unless you go back to Robin Hood, I suppose.
Even that was not...
No.
It's not quite there. That's interesting, and that Disney connection I think is really interesting, and particularly back to your comment that as Walt Disney was really defining a style of animation that really took hold here, Miyazaki was defining a style of animation, or really sort of leveraging a style of animation and defining in a similar capacity in Japan. And I think it's it's a real shame that it took so long to get here. I mean, when was Cagliostro first released here? Like 96, 97?
91, actually.
Oh, 91.
Yeah.
Still, that's a long time.
Yeah, it's a very long time.
And they were hard to get. I mean, I remember trying to find them as a kid. I mean, when did the Ghost in the Shell was like 95 or something like that. I remember it was hard to find. It was hard to find the comics. We had to go to they were not in my local dealer down the street.
No, I think Lensman might have been the first one that I saw. That came out, that was in 1984, I think, but that was, 1990 USA. That's when it came out. Again, another big gap.
Yeah, big gap. Well, it's about time that it's here, and I am very excited about the other two films. We're really doing just sort of a sampling because I also think it would be fun, particularly now that I watched this and started reading up on more of Miyazaki's work. It makes me want to watch more of them and do more of them in a row.
Yeah, I know. I think they're a lot of fun, and I definitely enjoy what they're doing. And I mean, this is a very fun film, and considering what we're going to be talking about this weekend for our film board, Spectre. This does have kind of a fun little James Bond sort of element. You've got this kind of guy who's got gadgets and rescues the girl, and there's lots of action scenes. I mean, I don't think it's on par with anything James Bond, but it still is kind of that vibe a little bit. It's pretty fun.
I agree. I had a good time. I had a fine time.
What did you think of the voices for the American version?
Oh, they were I don't know, suitably annoying. I don't know, because I don't know how great animated voices, like, I don't know how to gauge them as actors when I'm listening to them in their original language. I'm listening to and reading, and you know what I'm saying? Like watching a Japanese voice, they all sound great to me. Like when I listened to it in the dubbed voices and again, I think the voices we were looking, there was nobody in the voices that I recognized as somebody that I needed to have been following all these years.
The interesting thing about the Japanese voices, for a large chunk of them, Yasuo Yamada
right.
Lupin the Third, Taro Ishida did, who are the other ones? I'm trying to find the main ones. Kiyoshi Kobayashi did Jigen. Goro Naya did Zenigata. Eiko Masuyama did Fujiko, and Makio Inoue did Goemon. Those actors, I can't speak for all of them, but a good chunk of them have continued with these characters for long periods of time. It's crazy how these characters just really sustained so much of their career. If you look at, just take Yasuo Yamada, who did the voice of Lupin the Third. Once he did that back in the late 70s, I mean, he was basically just, he had done it actually before that. He did the Lupin the Third TV show. And then he just went on. And basically the last part of his career is nothing but playing Lupin the Third. It's interesting how latched onto these characters they became.
So Kiyoshi Kobayashi played Jigen, right?
Yep.
And so, could you guess, listening to his voice, the kinds of characters that he would dub into Japanese non-animated? And don't go look, don't cheat.
I couldn't. Well, but I mean, I listened to the English dub, I didn't get to hear his voice.
That's right, you didn't get to hear his voice. So this guy, like you were just saying, I mean, he's played the role in everything, all the television animation, the animated films, all the Lupin properties. He was Jigen, but then his dubbing roles, pretty much name a James Coburn part. Name a Lee Marvin part. Name a Tommy Lee Jones part. Franco Nero, Sam Elliott, Jack Palance, George Kennedy, Clint Eastwood. This guy, he even did Colonel Nathan Jessup in A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson. He's done all of them. He is the big bad hero dub in Japan.
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah. That is pretty crazy.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So the amazing characters. I wish I would have watched that original version, and because I think that would be worth watch. I may have to go back and do that, but I don't think I've ever seen it. I think the only version I've seen is the dubbed one.
Yeah,
of this film.
Well, the interesting thing about Lupin the Third is Bob Bergen did the original 1992 dub for it. Mm-hmm. Bob Bergen is a very prolific voiceover artist, and who is most well known right now as the current Porky Pig in anything that Warner Brothers puts out.
Space Jam.
Yeah, he's all over the place.
Been all over.
And then David Hayter, who is Lupin the Third in the 2000 dub, he is one of the writers of X-Men, X2, and Watchmen.
That's right. Look at that.
Yeah. So
and the voice actor for Solid Snake in the Metal Gear series.
That's right.
That's a big one. Did we ever play that when we lived together? Was that one of our games?
I don't think so. It sounds familiar, but I just can't speak to it.
That was big. Very big. Anyway, so I in terms of your original question, what do we think of the I thought it was fine. It was fine. It felt like a dubbed cartoon.
Well, when it comes to animated films, I really kind of agree with Roger Ebert, who's just because he was always like, when people would get up in arms about redubbed versions of animated films. He's like, an animated film is always dubbed.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's always dubbed. It doesn't matter what language you're looking at when you see it. So, I mean, I always prefer to watch the original with subtitles, but I really have, especially now that I have kids, I've grown to really not have a problem.
But I think it's
the dubbed version.
I think it's even more of a problem now than it was, and it's more of a problem now because we are more accustomed watching more sophisticated animation in which the lips match the language.
Well,
right?
I that's definitely true. Yeah, this film, I mean, these older films, I kind of look at it like watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The lips don't really match.
The lips don't match. Yeah, the lips don't match. It's fine. That's what it feels. It's fine. It's a big fat fine. But I think sitting down watching it with my kids who are really accustomed to recent animation, current animation, contemporary animation, where the lips are so painstakingly matched to the voice. Into the language that it really does feel dubbed. It feels like a dubbed actor or actress, just as it would in a live action film. I think that's an important difference.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right,
I can see that.
I'll call this one a draw.
A draw it is.
What do you have? Do you have anything else on your big fat list?
My big fat list. The only other person that I was going to talk about was Sumi Shimamoto, who played Lady Clarice Cagliostro. And really, it's just because we're going to be talking about her more soon. She was in My Neighbor Totoro. She played Yasuko, and she played Nausicaa in Nausicaa and of the Valley of the Wind. And I believe she was also in what was the other one that she was in? Princess Mononoke as Toki. So she's one of the few people that I could find who had been in more than one Miyazaki film. There was another person, I can't remember who it was, if it was Zenigata or somebody, but somebody else had been in a number of his other films.
Well, that's where we're going next, right? I mean, we're talking about Totoro next. I'm very much looking forward to that. I think I'm looking forward to that more, watching that with my kids.
Yeah, I mean, my kids love both of these films, but Totoro's my favorite of his films, so... The last thing was, we were going to bring up this Lupin the Third film, this live-action film that came out in 2014 that actually looks like it's quite a bit of fun. I don't know what the reviews were, but it looked kind of like a fun film. Ryuhei Kitamura directed it, and we should post the trailer for it in our show notes.
We'll definitely do that. It's worth checking out because I think they do a really good job. It feels very much true to the character, and he's wearing leather pants. Fancy.
and he has the nice colored coat too,
he does.
Which I enjoyed.
Yeah, it looked great. I don't know. It felt a little bit like Speed Racer to me, like the I don't know, but it looked fun. So that's worth checking out.
Here you go. Upon release, the film reached second place at the Japanese box office.
Did you get any numbers on this one in particular?
They were tricky to find, but I did find some. I found that, and it was all in yen, so I did my best to do a conversion of 1979 yen to dollars. The things I end up searching for on the internet, Pete, I tell you. This film, in dollars, it cost about 500 million yen to make this film back in 1979, which is about $2 million, about 6.7 million adjusted dollars in today's dollars. And it ended up making about 600 million yen, which is about wrong number. It ended up making about $8 million adjusted. So it made a little bit of money back. Not a ton, but it did. And that was for an adjusted profit per finished minute of $13,000 per finished minute about. This is a film that it didn't get a huge reaction in Japan when it first came out. A lot of it was because some people were rather upset that Lupin the Third was not like the monkey punch. That's totally different monkey. The monkey punch version that they had all grown to love. It was a little more tame, and some people were upset by that. But that being said, it has found a much bigger audience as time has grown on.
Yeah, we don't know anything about people being upset with adaptations.
No.
Not a thing.
Never heard about that.
I say we rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com, everybody, and you should sign up, set up your account. And like more and more people are writing us and doing, join the club. And you should look at all the movies we've done and rank them. Start with Children of the Corn. I think we established that as canon last week. You start there and then rank everything against Children of the Corn and see how your list shakes out against ours. We can't wait to compare. And if you, as you're doing this, if you come up with any great shockers, we want to hear. Let us know on Facebook or send us. Do you send messages? You're the real expert on Flickchart. Can you message people on Flickchart? Do we get messages there?
There are comments that people can make on your page, and you can kind of, you can read those. I don't get notifications or anything if somebody does that, but every time I log in, I check our page to see. So if you do leave us a note there, we'll see it.
Twitter and Facebook, we get notifications, and so both of us get buzzed. So we like that. Let us know. What are the big shocks, and why are you so surprised? We want to hear. That's it. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Lupin the Third, The Castle of Cagliostro, or Kind Hearts and Coronets.
What would I put on first?
Well, I would probably put on the Castle of Cagliostro first, but
I think I'm going to go with
Hearts and Coronets.
Kind Hearts and Coronets.
The Castle of Cagliostro or The Host. I would pick Castle of Cagliostro here.
Would you?
Yeah, I just, I have all these issues with The Host.
Well, I know.
It just ends up bugging me every time I watch that film.
I'm on the fence on this one, so I will give it to you.
All right.
Also, I kind of want to seed an animated film a little bit higher in our list. Is that subversive of me?
It's fine. Lupin the Third or La Vie en Rose.
I certainly didn't say. I know we weren't crazy about La Vie en Rose as a film, but I certainly saw no performances in there like the performance of the great Edith Piaf.
No, I agree with you there. I mean, I would watch Castle of Cagliostro first. But if we're looking at the performance there, I don't know. I'm a little torn.
You're done? I think I would probably lean toward La Vie en Rose.
All right. Well, I'll give that one to you. Right. Lupin the Third or Gallipoli?
Oh, I think Gallipoli.
I would do Lupin the Third here.
Really?
Yeah. I think I would.
Huh. All right.
I'm not gonna go to the mats on it or anything.
All right. No.
If you're firm on Gallipoli,
sir, I yield to the gentleman from Arizona.
Okay, there you go. Lupin the Third or Moon?
Moon.
Yeah, I have some pacing issues with Moon, but it's pretty dang creative. How about Lupin the Third or It Happened One Night? Definitely It Happened One Night.
Yeah, It Happened One Night. I might not be as, vociferous about it as you.
All right, The Castle of Cagliostro or The Thin Man?
The Thin Man.
Really?
Yes, really.
Because I would be Castle of Cagliostro here.
A lot? Like go to the mats on it a lot?
No, I wouldn't go to the mats on it.
I think I'm there.
If you're Thin Man, I'll give you Thin Man.
I'm Thin Man. Firmly.
Right. This is like our Gentleman Thief episode.
It really is. It really is.
Lupin the Third, The Castle of Cagliostro, or The Poseidon Adventure. Upside down action.
They scratch the same itch for me.
Yeah. I agree.
I'll probably go Lupin the Third.
Yeah, I will too. I'm pretty almost evenly split on this one. 143 out of 209.
All right.
Yeah, not too bad.
That's not too bad.
For the start of the Hayao Miyazaki series, I think that it landed in a fair spot.
It's fine.
It's just fine.
It's fine. I think we are all much more excited to move into this. It's become Studio Ghibli stuff, and I feel like where we go next, we get to see a much more sort of florid, enthusiastic voice coming from Miyazaki, and that's what gets me so excited about next week.
Absolutely, we're going to be jumping into 1988's My Neighbor Totoro.
Very
much looking forward to that one.
Very, very much. Before that, though, be on the lookout, because we do have our film board, as Andy has already said, alluded to. We have our film board this weekend. We're doing Spectre, and you're on your way to see it, so we got to shut up.
Yes, but we forgot your star rating. What's your Letterboxd star rating for this one?
Oh, geez. I don't know. What's yours? You're in the 4s.
No, I think I'm 3.5, right in there. I'm gonna say I'm gonna laugh. I'm gonna latch in at 3.5. I think.
All right. I also will be 3.5. How's that?
All right, that sounds good.
All right, good. That's it. So yes, after the star rating, then we're doing Spectre, and then I gotta go to bed.
All right. I got this printing press down in my basement. I hear some noise down there. I got to run down there and check on it, make sure everything's okay.
I've got one. I've got a 1-star from 2000. Here we go. Our family has been delighted to view My Neighbor Totoro many times over the years. I purchased this video for my 8-year-old son's Christmas stocking and was horrified to hear that the first word spoken was "son of a bee." Women are referred to as broads, and these are some of the less offensive utterings during this film. I found it neither entertaining nor suitable for a child, 9, 10, or 12, for that matter. I am not a prude. But this film, interestingly, and then stops. She just stops. But this film, and then stops.
Take it anymore. Maybe she
stops writing.
Combusted.
No punctuation, no nothing. And as you can imagine, the comments are better. The comments on the comment are better. Take some responsibility for your mistake to purchase an anime without reading the product PG-13 rating. The story is what it is. You need to grow up. We don't need to call names.
No, but
really, you could read the packaging. It does say PG-13 right on it.
Right, exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, I've got a 1-star by Snoopy63123, who says, boring, boring, boring. I bought this DVD because I liked Princess Mononoke so much. However, I found this one to be absolutely boring. There just wasn't enough action in this feature, which is funny because it's all action. It felt like I was always waiting for something to happen, but it never did.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta hit the play button, not just watch the menu. Oh,
snap, Amazon. Sophia. So what's the movie we just watched? Do you remember the name?
The Castle of Cagliostro.
You want to try that again?
The Castle of Cagliostro. I can't say.
Lupin was a bad guy, but he's actually not. He saves people, but to him, the bad guy, the really bad guy, he thinks he's a thief. Lupin, but he's good. What I thought of Lupin the Third, Castle of Cagliostro, that it was a very adventurous movie. It was good, I guess. He was trying to rob the castle of some sort. There was lots of running and movement and lots of talking and planning. Well, he didn't do much stealing. I liked that he was a thief and a helpful person. He was awesome. I think Lupin is a good guy and a bad guy because he saves people and he also steals money. I liked it when he saved the girl from going off the cliff.
He was physically ridiculous just because of the way he moved and climbed up the sides of buildings and upside down on the buildings and hanging by a finger.
I liked that he had like this belt thingy and he went up and down. That was cool.
Kind of ridiculously impossible, like climbing up the side of that building and like upside down and all over the building and sliding down the roof.
Awesome. I wanted to do that. Only if I had a rope and then a bullet and then it go down and then I had a one and then I jumped. Then I jumped and then I got on it.
You think that you could really do that?
No, but I wanted to do it. I liked when the thing that comes out of his belt, the little grappling hook, because he's like, it shoots out of the waterfall thing and he says something. What does he say again, Daddy? You're really good at making a guest feel unwelcome. That's really funny. I like the color yellow. It can drive up hills, like that mountain. It can drive up mountains. And I'm guessing that the license plate would come off and they would trip on it. They steal the money and all the cars went into something and the wheel fell off and their cars fell in pieces too. And the tree fell in one.
Just the way he talked.
Yeah.
You can't trust them because you don't know what they're saying on the other side of their mouth.
Cagliostro looks a little old-fashioned.
I guess it makes sense because it's I haven't seen all the Indiana Jones movies, but they are very similar, it seems like.
I didn't really like the goons. I didn't like those guys that were hunched over and they're like
Those creepy little bad guys.
Yeah,
Dressed
they're
in black with the long fingers.
Yeah, they're like
I thought those were real. I thought that their claws were real at first because it felt like everything else in this movie was crazy. So why couldn't there be creepy alligator walking porcupine people? The part where they're swimming underwater, that's scary. I don't like that, underwater in a tunnel kind of feeling, very confined. I don't like drowning. That thought of drowning or anything else like that, it's not good.
I don't think you're alone.
Okay.
those are funny.
They were funny? Were they scary?
No, they're fun.
No. What was your favorite part of the movie?
Every single one. My favorite part of the movie was when Lupin dressed up as the guy that reads the book and says all the stuff for the marriage. That was my favorite part. I think my favorite part was when he came through the castle roof to save the girl, and when in the beginning when she gave him the ring. What happens in that part is that Lupin makes this thing that he's like rising from the dead, but he's actually the guy that reads the book for the marriage. He's like talking, the machine that Lupin made from the Rise of the Dead, and then all the swords go through him because they want to kill him. But then Lupin, who's the book guy for the marriage, he takes the rings off of the little pillow thing, and then he runs with the girl. And that's all on TV. When it first started and the police started, the guys started to get them. When they got to have all the money. Funny. That bad guy, the Count, I didn't really think he was that scary.
I guess he was kind of mean and horrible. He was mean and horrible, but I kind of understand his ideas because it felt like he just wanted to know the secret, and it felt like he could have been left out of something.
You're talking about the goat secret at the end with the rings?
Yeah.
That he was driven by that.
Yeah, that's all it felt like that was all he wanted, really. Like, he was gonna kill Clarice afterwards. It wasn't that he wanted to marry her, it was that he just wanted her ring.
I like the ones that are hand-drawn because you can make a lot of mistakes, but sometimes the mistakes make it better. I could sort of see some erase marks, sort of, which looked really cool because it sort of blended in with it, and it made it look cooler. Like, you can express your mind and make things look how you want it to look, not how the computer wants it to look, how you want it to look.
No, did you understand what Count Cagliostro was doing with all that fake money?
He was giving it away to people, but they gave it away.
Why was he giving it away to people?
They were letting people get it so people could have it, but then they will throw it away.
Do you know what counterfeit money is?
It's fake.
It's fake, that's right. Can you use fake money when you go to the store?
No, you can't buy anything.
No, it's all fake, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They beep it, and then it says, and then they say, no,
Oh,
it's not real money.
then you're out of luck, huh?
And then you don't have any money. There's a lot of different voices for every character, but for some reason, I feel like in movies that are not Disney, I feel like there's more voice into the movie. Like reading a book, you can like hear the voice, but it's not actually, there's no actual voice, but you can hear the voice. Like the anger and the sadness and the fear, like I can hear that and feel it more in the non-Disney movies. Because in the Disney movies, there's not really problems. Is Mickey Mouse Disney? Like, there's not really problems. They just solve them. There's not like things getting in the way. Well, there is things getting in the way of Mickey Mouse. But it's not like they're asking us, which feels weird because TV's asking us. It just feels really weird.
What did you think of the dog? Did you like the dog? The princess's dog?
Yes!
Do you want a dog?
Yes!
Yeah.
Well, sometimes they say it too fast and the words disappear before I can read it all. So I like the English because you can understand it. I would recommend the Castle of Cagliostro to other kids because I think if people like ninja Japanese warrior movies, they'll definitely like this. They'll definitely think it's funny. When the clock tower, when the bad guy put the rings in the eyes, then it went in and then the clock was like going towards the middle and he's like, no, I don't want to get squished. And that was super funny and weird. And that's why I covered my face. Because it was just super weird. Yeah. But I heard it's like, I'm like, ugh. Yeah, it's really icky. I would definitely want to see other Hayao Miyazaki movies. This was an awesome movie.
I would recommend the Castle of I recommend the Castle of How do we say it, Dad?
Cagliostro.
Cagliostro. I got it right. Cagliostro.
You did not get it right. No.
What?
That's pretty clever.
It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
Season 5 had some great adaptations, like our Meryl Streep Oscar-nominated performances series. We covered adaptations like Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The French Lieutenant's Woman.
It's a real Sophie's Choice between those books. You see what I did there?
Yeah. And I don't think it's quite at the level of a real Sophie's Choice.
We also did Snowpiercer for our Bong Joon-ho series, adapted from the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage. Man, I love that movie.
We had our 2-part 1939 series that included adaptations like Gone with the Wind, Ninotchka, The Women, and The Hound of the Baskervilles.
A number of those 1939 movies, like Goodbye, Mr. Chips, also tied into our recent 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominee series.
Our naughty children horror series had creepy adaptations like The Bad Seed, Village of the Damned, The Innocents, and Children of the Corn.
For our Hayao Miyazaki series, we talked about his take on Lupin the Third with the Castle of Cagliostro, plus his own The Wind Rises.
Some great listener choice picks too, Viridiana and The Great Escape.
And for our David Mamet Wright series, The Verdict, The Untouchables, and Glengarry Glen Ross.
Plus, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from our Shane Black series adapted from Brett Halliday's novel, Bodies Are Where You Find Them.
Dive into the sources for all of these at thenextreel.com/originals.
Every book you buy helps support the show. Check out thenextreel.com/originals today and find your next read.